I don't know that I'm ready for this. Okay, hi, welcome to the RDA Board of Directors meeting. We don't have, I mean, we have we have general comments, but no general comments, public hearing. We will start now with the RDA budget amendment number 5. Oh, nope. No, nobody wants to talk about that from the public? Great, then we'll just go on to business. So, RDA budget amendment number 5. Danny. Oh, before you start, just so everybody in the audience is aware, we are changing the agenda just a little bit. We will first discuss the RDA budget amendment number 5, and then we will be discussing the motion sheet for fiscal year 2019-2020 annual budget. So we're moving number 4 up to number 2, and then everything else will shift down. Hi.
Okay, hi. Thank you, Madam Chair. Thank you, board members. Our first item to speak to today is budget amendment number 5. We have provided a detailed breakdown within the packet of what the accounts and numbers are for this. We did not prepare a formal presentation. The reason for that is, as you've seen in the memo, that primarily budget amendment number 5 is strictly housekeeping issues insofar as we're basically just accepting the additional amount of tax increment that the agency has received as part of our final disbursement from the county. And outside of that, the only other item that is of note for the board is we have included in that the allocation of the funds for the sale of the Marmalade block back in March, which the board had already authorized or done a straw poll to give us the ability to allocate that towards the construction of the park within that project. And so, that being said, if there are any questions on specific line items or amounts or how we came up with some of these transfers, I'd be happy to answer them.
Board, any discussion? Great. I will look for a motion, but before we look for a motion on from our motion sheet, I do need a motion to close the public hearing.
So moved.
I have a motion by Board Member Wharton, a second by Board Member Mendenhall. All those in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Okay, so the public hearing is closed. I would now look for a motion on budget amendment number 5.
Madam Chair,
Yes.
I move that the board approve the budget amendment as proposed by the administration and recapture $395,573 of Housing Trust Fund allocation to go into a holding account in the primary housing fund.
Second.
I have a motion by Board Member Luke, a second by Board Member Rogers. Any discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed? Okay, great. That
Thank you.
passes. And on to the next item. We are now, as I mentioned, going to discuss agenda item that is on your agenda is number 4, which is the 2019-2020 annual budget.
I think, Madam Chair, we're still waiting for the printouts to come. So, you know what? It might be more helpful if we punt this one more item, if that's okay. My apologies for not having the printouts ready, but I think it'll be easier for you guys to follow if we can just all look at the motion sheets and then we'll pull it up on the screen. Is that okay?
That's fine. We do have the motion sheets in our packets in Dropbox.
I don't know if they were updated as of this morning. Are these
okay.
sorry, Cindy
Not
Lou,
a
are
problem.
these the new ones? Okay, great. See, things change in the course of a minute.
Thank you.
You just weren't coming outside. I know what you were doing.
Tell you.
So, by way of reminder, the board is scheduled to meet at the 7 o'clock hearing time that's usually set for the council. At that time, the board will consider formal adoption of the budget, but staff just wanted to run through the potential budget adoption motion sheet so that we could make any changes that the board desired between now and then, so that we made sure to have the right budget for you guys to adopt at 7.
Thank you.
So the key changes should also be at your places now. And the main difference from the key changes that you saw over the weekend and this is that staff has just sort of highlighted in a sort of extra fund, essentially, the concept of the Housing Trust Fund in the RDA. So you'll see that that's tracked entirely separately from the primary housing fund. This was a concept so that it made it extra clear that the funds were going to be tracked and managed sort of separately, although the purposes would still be governed by the purposes of the Housing Trust Fund.
Anybody?
And if there's no changes, we can just have the motion sheet for your consideration at the 7 o'clock meeting. You don't need to take action on it now, is what I'm saying.
Yes.
I don't have changes to propose at this point. I appreciated the conversations that you've been having and other board members with some concerned parties, and I wondered if you could just kind of
Just for-
encapsulate where that dialogue is at and the purpose of these shifts.
Yes, definitely. Anna, Chris, and I were able to meet with a housing advocate recently on Monday who did have some concerns about this move. And it's not a permanent move. It's not intended at this point to be a permanent move or to take away any of this funding or any of these dollars at any point and any time. In fact, the idea, and actually the housing advocate mentioned this when we were talking, is the idea around housing policies and bigger housing policies that maybe housing development, the development part of it belongs with a department that does development, and that they're having some of these similar conversations up at a state level as well of where these development dollars are right now. For example, in the state level are in workforce services, and that department is supposed to, their sort of mission is to put people with resources. And so there's this question of, are they really the best equipped to do the developing of housing? And I think that's a similar question that we need to have here on a higher level. But of course, we're at the end of a budget and need to move forward. And so in talking with with council members and kind of going through this, it seems that for this year, putting this in where we know that there is expertise in developing and in understanding those negotiations and with developers and having those relationships, that maybe we want to do this and see how it works. And I think that this is a sound policy decision, but needs to have a bigger and broader policy discussion. And it's something that we've all talked about in here that, I hope that we can have that bigger policy discussion. We've talked about maybe having an outside consultant come in and kind of look at what our housing needs are, how we're doing it, what are the best practices to be doing. For me, I believe that one of our jobs is to ensure that we are efficiently and effectively spending our taxpayer dollars. That's why we're here. We're the stewards of that money. And we've also been talking about streamlining processes of how are we going to get everyone in one spot. This is one way, and I've heard from some developers that it was hard for them to go to several different spots to see where and how and where they're going to get their funding. And this is hopefully a one-stop shopping center, if you will, but with the needs in different places and all the parameters in the same way. Nothing is changing with that at all. It's just maybe looking at a policy if this is the right move there. Did that cover kind of our conversation we had yesterday? It's been a long few weeks.
Yeah, thank you. I appreciate that. I also wanted to say that the duty that we have as a board and then that we have as a council is to make sure there's as consistent and transparent a process to every taxpayer dollar that we give out, whether it's through a loan or a grant or whatever. And at this point in time, we know that the RDA is able to give that consistent and transparent process on the development side and be able to distribute the dollars most promptly through that process. And that's why at this point, I'm going to support today this move with everything you just said as the foundation of it, that we're going to have a policy discussion. We're going to evaluate this so that it's the best use of those dollars that we can ensure to the public. And I could see us having a housing development trust fund and a housing programming trust fund in the future, and that those could be housed in the RDA and CAN respectively. But I look forward to having that bigger policy discussion and being able to get these dollars out into the housing development pool as fast as possible with consistency and transparency.
Thank you for that, Erin. And one other thing, I do want to say it was really an eye-opening and informative meeting to meet with the housing advocate and understand some of those concerns, but also be able to come together and say, okay, nothing's changing. And I think that was a concern, is that we're getting rid of the housing trust fund, which is not at all what was intended or that we had hoped for. It was also interesting to hear that they're having some similar discussions about sort of the development versus the programming and where that is and how that looks. So I don't see her in here, but I do, if she's listening or watching, want to say that I appreciate having people sit down at the table and come together and talk about these things so we can work together. That was really helpful and informative, I think, for both of us. So, Chris, did you want to say something?
Just that I felt a lot better too after our meeting. I think that there were some misconceptions because we were moving really quickly, but I just wanted to thank you for doing such a good job to try to bring together so many different people and try to answer those questions and try to come up with something that the whole council feels comfortable with.
Thank you.
So I know that took a lot of work.
Thank you. Anyone else? Okay.
So we'll have all the information ready for you to consider at tonight's meeting. I also should have been clear, the RDA technically adopts the budget via resolution. So the motion sheet refers to a resolution. We'll also have that for your meeting at 7. It was just finalized this morning. So there is some language in there about referring to the housing piece. So we'll send that around so that make sure that you guys are aware of that.
Thank you.
So.
And can I just say, now that we're sort of at the end of this, that I cannot thank our council staff enough. You guys have worked tirelessly and endlessly and put up with all 7 of us and answer questions in the middle of the night and listen to my weird SNL dreams about my anxiety and calm my fears a lot. And I really cannot thank all of you enough for the hard work that you guys have done to really make this process as great as it can be. So thank you. Thank you so much. If there's nothing else on this, we'll move on to the next agenda item. Thank you. Let's see. Our next agenda item is a resolution with a loan to the congregation group. If I could get Danny and Cara to the table, please.
Okay, ready? Okay, thank you again, Madam Chair, members of the board. We as staff are pretty excited to bring this loan to you. This is a loan for a new project within the North Temple project area, and there's been a lot of conversation about developing a catalytic project in that neighborhood. And while a loan to build a distillery may not on the surface seem like a catalytic project, but it's one that we as staff are very excited about because we think it'll bring a use and an activity to the neighborhood that will be a destination and a draw and start providing those small businesses that really create a neighborhood and a community and provide some character. So having said that, I will turn it over to Cara, who will go through the presentation in terms of the loan. And before I do that, I will start by saying one of the other reasons we're excited as staff is that this is one of our loans that we're not asking for any waivers. This fits our program and policy, And really the reason we are here before the board to get approval is because as per our policy, it's more than 500,000. And so we get the pleasure of letting you guys put your stamp on the approval here. So that's something that we always strive for, and it's nice when those actually come in, and we like to highlight that because it's a lot of work that staff puts in with the applicant, and we appreciate what we have done and what the applicant has done in terms of bringing this vision forward. So turn it over to you, Karen.
Great, thanks, Danny. So this is the Congregation Spirits Distillery loan as the application we've brought to you. This slide here shows where the project is located. It's at 25 North, 900 West in the North Temple project area.
25 North. Can you tell me where that's by? So I can picture it in my brain.
Sure, it's across 900 West from Red Iguana 2, north
Oh.
side of the tracks.
Nice. Okay, great. Thank you.
Okay. The concept of the project is it's a distillery where they will be distilling gin, whiskey, and brandy, a bar and grill, and a working urban fruit orchard. The project includes the adaptive reuse of the existing 12,000 square foot commercial building that's on site, and then they've acquired 2 properties north of there also, where they will be demolishing the buildings on site and removing some trees, and their plan is to reuse as many of those materials from the demolition as possible in their project. Excuse me. Their project includes an outdoor dining area and what they're calling a spirit garden outdoor, and they have a 140-foot mural wall planned facing that outdoor area. So the total project cost is about $3.6 million, and they are anticipated to break ground this summer and take about 6 months for construction.
As you can tell, none of us are excited for this project.
This slide shows where their financing is planned to be coming from. They've been working with a local bank for an SBA 504 loan, which involves a portion of the loan coming from the local bank and a portion coming from the CDC. Then the RDA loan amount is $850,000, and then you can see these 2 amounts here for their equity contribution. No, wait, did I do this yet? Yeah, okay. The terms of the loan, as Danny mentioned, are within the RDA loan policy without requiring any waivers, but I'll go through them quickly here. We started with our 10-year U.S. Treasury yield curve rate plus 3%, and that gave us a 5.37% starting interest rate. And then to acknowledge 6 public benefit criteria that the project meets, which includes sustainability, public amenities, adaptive reuse, permanent job creation, transit alternatives, and economic impact. We have recommended a reduction of 3% to the interest rate to result in a final interest rate of 2.37%. That's based on May 15th curve rate, so we'll see what it is when we close the loan, but that's where we were when we wrote the memo. The loan term is 10 years. Per the loan policy, that interest rate will increase by 2% after year 5, and they will begin making their principal and interest payments 4 months after receiving their certificate of occupancy.
Yeah, of course.
Typically, is that, or do we usually begin payments 4 months after certificate of occupancy?
Yeah, that's written in our policy.
Okay.
The collateral is the subordinated mortgage lien on the property, and then a corporate guarantee by Water Witch Bar and a personal guarantee by Sean Nevis, who is here, I should mention, for answering any questions about the project. This is a site plan for the project. It's probably a little bit hard to see, but it includes, well, I should probably let Sean speak to this site plan when he comes up, actually. Here's an elevation of the face of the building that faces the outdoor dining area. And then I have a couple renderings of the final project. And they're using the existing iron gate that's shown over the driveway here, that's been there since the building was constructed, and putting Standard Candle on it, which is the name of the bar and grill that's planned for the project. and there's the mural wall and the outdoor dining area. So,
Great. Does Sean want to join us and talk about some things? I mostly want to know about this orchard. And also, I lived literally behind Red Iguana 2. My first house was over there. Why does all the cool stuff come in when I leave? Huh? Hi, Sean. Welcome.
Hi, thanks for having me, board. Really appreciate the opportunity to talk about the project. And as my partners in the audience, I'd love to talk too much about this project. So if I go over time, let me know.
Madam Chair, well, can we ask him to introduce his partners? And they don't have to come up.
Absolutely, absolutely. In the audience, we've got Matthew Full, and behind him, Brian Wrigley. We're missing another partner, Scott Gardner, who's now preparing for a big, we're doing a press tour for Waterwitch, representing the state of Utah in Los Angeles and New York over the next couple of weeks. Really excited about that. So he sends his apologies for not being able to join.
Awesome. Great. So, any particular questions? I really am curious about the orchard. There's going to be an orchard?
Absolutely, yeah. We've been working on this so long. Had we pulled off what we wanted to, you might have been able to actually be part of this when you lived in the neighborhood too. We've literally we put our heads towards this in 2012. This was something we've been working on for a really, really long time, and the orchard really. The orchard portion of it really speaks to the type of equipment that we're installing. We're installing cognac stills that were made. We don't know the exact date, but we think that they were built in pre-World War II era in France. And they were actually refurbished for use in Northern California and never installed. And so the equipment itself is just sort of made to make brandy. And it also makes beautiful gin and whiskey as well. And so we've been lucky enough to lock down just an amazing property that has some excess land in it, and we looked at the opportunity to really sort of learn how to till the earth and plant fruit trees, and that opened up this amazing educational opportunity that we'll offer to the public to see sort of cradle to grave use of fruit. Including natural native yeasts, but we plan on planting a number of heirloom apple, pear, and stone fruit varietals. We're still consulting on which varieties. There's a cherry tree on site that we're going to be leaving there, fortunately, as well. And so the whole concept was to be able to witness the creation of spirits from sort of cradle to grave. Really excited about it.
Cool. Any other questions? Anna?
How is it going with the ABC? I'm not sure if you talked about it yet. But
Absolutely. So it is a pretty complex licensing scenario. We originally really wanted this to be a restaurant where everybody could join in. And unfortunately, Utah's restaurant laws are so restrictive that we couldn't hit the ratio requirements that they require for food. So we will be actually applying for a bar license as the restaurant portion. We hope to turn that into what it was meant to be at some point in the future if we can get the laws to where we feel like they make sense. But we will also have a distillery license, which is a federal and it's called a DSP license with the federal government and also with the state of Utah as well.
Great.
like with that one.
Thank you.
Yeah, Andrew.
Hey, I appreciate you coming back. We talked earlier, and I'm impressed by the project, partially because of the reuse of the existing building. Very nice, nice find, number one, to fit your needs, and to keep the building and make it beautiful again, and also to activate this particular area. We've been waiting for a long time for this section of North Temple to get something to jump it, right? Get it going here, jump start it, and I hope this will be a part of that. So I appreciate this, and I approve of the terms at this point. So,
Thank you.
Yeah. Oh, sorry.
Oh, go ahead, James, sorry.
I was just going to, since everyone confuses Andrew and I anyway, I was just going to piggyback on that and just say I really appreciate in the staff report learning about how if trees are taken down, you're going to use them for the interior, the wrought iron you're going to use for the fence. I mean, just the reuse is amazing and how you're doing this. So, and like Andrew said, this is the neighborhood, in my opinion, that on the west side that has needed it more than anywhere else. So this is a great, I don't want to call it the catalytic project, Danny, but this is seriously down to nuts and bolts thing that the community really needs. So thank you.
Thank you. Thank you so much.
Yeah, I agree about the reuse, and we had a meeting recently about some of those benchmarks for us evaluating when we
Yes.
want to do interest rate reductions, and I feel like we can tighten up some of those general categories, and your reuse of not just the building, but the elements of the building and on the property is exactly what I was saying. Like, we're not even imagining some of the cool stuff people are going to be able to come up with. And here you are, you're setting a new bar really for what I'm going to be looking for in future projects when they say we're going to be reusing the space and the building. You're going above and beyond, but it's amazing. I totally agree that this is going to be an incredible boon and boost to this community and the area, and the adjacency to the Folsom Trail, which is going to be coming along soon. I think is going to further enhance the area with your business. It's so cool that we're getting a distillery back in Salt Lake City. And I hope you're the first of many more to come in a healthy, competitive business market.
Us too.
And if you're taking advice on your gin, I prefer Uncle Val's and something along the more botanical lines.
Very good. It's a very good gin. It's a delicious gin.
Charlie?
So even though it's not an RDA area, if you guys ever are interested in expanding, I would strongly encourage you to look further east, because
Sugar
there
House?
are a lot of really great places there as well for cool concepts like this. So
Yeah, so we've got a
Andrew's shaking his head, so. No, this is exciting, so thank you for your vision.
Chris?
I was going to say the same thing about just moving ever so slightly east, like maybe 5 blocks. But yeah, I'm really excited about this. I did get your email. Sorry, I haven't emailed you back. But I'm very excited about this, and there's nothing I don't like about this project. So I love that integrating the history and everything, and I'm really excited to see it come along. So
Thank you.
Thank you, and I'm happy to support it.
Thank you.
Right. I'm obviously very excited about the project, so thank you for doing this. It's going to be awesome, and I think it really can be a model for other cool projects that we can do throughout the city. And once again, I want to thank the RDA staff and our staff, but for putting this great staff report together. It really, I keep talking about it, but it's just because it works so well. I love being able to say, this is why we're lowering the interest rate. I love being able to look at those factors and say, this is great. This all makes sense. It gives me such relief when we can do that, right? And so thank you so much for getting that put together, for explaining that in our staff report, for really showing us that, because as other projects come along, we get to be like, nah, sorry, you're not as good as they are, so you don't get the same. No, I'm kidding, but or you're better, I don't know. But it really does help, and it's great. So thank you for taking the time and the energy and the work that you guys have put into this. I look forward to drinking there. Let's be honest.
Wonderful. We
Madam
look
Chair?
forward.
Yeah.
Can I make a motion?
Yeah.
I'm going to move that we adopt a resolution authorizing a loan of up to $850,000 to Congregation Group LLC for their project located at 25 North, 900 West.
Second.
I have a motion by Board Member Mendenhall, a second by Vice Chair Mr. Wharton. All those in favor? Aye. Any opposed? Congratulations.
Thank you so much. I appreciate it. Thank you.
Yep.
I wanted to thank the RDA staff for doing such an amazing job too. They were just a really an asset to the community.
Thank you.
Truly.
Thank you to Kara. That wasn't directed at me. Kara did everything. So,
Next up, we have a little project information update with the 255 South State Street development. And we have Danny and Court and Corinne. And I also do see our developer partners in the audience as well. So if people have specific questions about the project, I'm sure they would be happy to answer any specific questions. So,
okay,
take it away.
thank you again. We are fortunate to have what we consider to be another great project in Before I get started, I wanted to thank both the mayor and the board here, because it was probably about a year and a half ago that we went to both of you in your respective capacities and pitched this crazy idea of the agency walking across the street and buying this property back out of foreclosure. That was a failed project, and so I want to start by saying thank you to the mayor for her vision and her faith in us, as well as the board, of sharing that vision and allocating the funds for us to do that, because that was a bit of a stretch. And what we hope to present to you today is hopefully the justification for why we did that, and present a project that lives up to the expectations that you all had at that time. Court and Corinne have been working on this project a lot. Court, I think this happened early on in my time at the RDA, so I think when I assigned this to Court, he may have thought I was punishing him. And so he's put in a significant amount of time of bringing this project through the RFQ, and then to where we're at right now with the negotiations with the developer. And so I want to thank them for all their work, as well as Jim Sarayan, our property manager, who had the unenviable job of having to maintain this property while the structure was still up. So I owe him quite a bit for that. So having said all that, what we have for you today is really just a briefing on the project. This is a little bit outside of our normal process, but given the complexity of this project and the magnitude of what the agency's participation and what the project is proposed at, we thought it would be a good idea to touch base with the board, give you an update, be able to meet the developers, and understand what we've been working on for the past year and a half. So having said that, I'll turn that time over to Court and Corinne, and then we'll likely invite the developer to come up and do the presentation.
And if before you start, Corinne, I kind of want to just give the board an update. Danny's right in that this is a little outside of the process, but it's something that we've kind of all been talking about, of bringing the project, or the idea of the project, to the board first before anything is getting started, so that there's kind of a thermometer gauge here, so that we can see how interested the board is, so that developers understand what our expectations are and what our interest is, and don't go spend a bunch of money that then we have to kind of figure out where we're going to get it, right? So it's something that we, like I said, we've kind of been talking about of this pre-presentation, if you will, to gauge where the board is. And hopefully, I think it will be something that we it may be out of the process right now, but I think it will be something that becomes part of the process as we move forward on different projects, just so that there is a lot of clarity and understanding for everyone. Is that accurate, Danny, of things we've talked about? Okay.
That's perfect.
Thank you. Go ahead.
Thank you. As Danny was mentioning, we purchased the property in the fall of 2017, turned around really quickly there and got an RFQ on the streets in February of 18. And I think as a basis for our discussion today, it would be good to highlight sort of what we asked for in that RFQ. There are 6 items. There's more than those 6, but the 6 that really are, I think, germane to today's discussion are: we were looking for a broad range of housing types in an affordable housing project in the downtown. We wanted an active ground floor use. We didn't want a parking lot right there on that portion of State Street. We were looking for a mid-block walkway to connect State Street through to Floral Street and Edison Street. There's a historic house, a historic structure on the property, and we wanted to preserve that and restore it. We wanted a quality design project, and we wanted something to happen in a timely manner, just given the history of the site and the sort of failed development that had happened there previously. So the Bryn Shore's vision through the RFQ process really aligned with that vision, and so they were the developer that was selected. And while this is their first project in this marketplace, they are not new to affordable housing. They're very experienced in that regard, and so they've been really great partners thus far. So I'm happy to have them here to give you a brief overview. Madam Chair, if it's okay, can we have David Brint and Whitney Weller join us at the table? And with that, I think that David will walk us through the presentation here. I think we're going to need, we got Whitney down there.
Good afternoon. Nice to see you all.
I should turn a mic on. Should I just get you to introduce yourselves to the entire board, and then it's clear also on the record? So,
yes, I'm David Brint, principal at Bryn Shore Development.
And I'm Whitney Weller, Senior Vice President at Bryn Shore Development.
Okay, so we'll run through the presentation a little. Feel free to ask questions during, but I'm only going to take about 5 or 10 minutes to do this, and then you can ask questions. But for those of you who don't know us, we've been in business for 25 years. We're one of the largest development companies of affordable housing in the country. We've done completed about 75 projects. All of our projects are affordable housing projects. Many are mixed income, many are mixed use. And we're located now in the Chicagoland area, but we operate all over the country. This is the property. I see what the latest preference of this council is for reuse. I am going to fail immediately. I apologize.
But you're saving something. You're saving
Yeah, we are.
That's not true. You're saving the house in the back. Come on.
That's true. I didn't think of that. That's true. And although Court has lobbied for this to be a public art exhibition facility,
Works.
I think we have some better ideas. He went over what the requirements were. Interesting RFQ with all the vision that you had. I think we tried to, we met all of those requirements, exceeded them in certain ways, and I hope you'll like what we have to present. So the project's 190 units of mixed income housing. We'll go through the income mixes in a little bit. We have activated a Paseo that will open the street from State Street through to, well, really almost through to Edison, but certainly to Floral. There'll be 23,000 square feet of commercial space, about 100 units of subterranean parking. There'll be some, maybe 15 or so spaces of parking on grade. Just to give you an idea of the way we look at things, you know, we have studied everything that was around the area, what the views were, access through to public transportation, and that's presented in this slide here. Have they seen? Is this in their packet?
It is.
So you send your packet, just to give you an idea of what's happening in the district. When we do this in part because when we're trying to conceive what the commercial component would be, we wanted to link to some of the other uses there. There's a big arts district, so one of the things we've done is brought in an organization that does arts programming for low-income children. And then identified a operator that would activate the street with a food court concept, but also what they do that's very different is they do programming of activities, concerts, banquets, all sorts of things that will create energy and activity on the street. These are some renderings. One of the things that you asked for was unique architecture, and I think this is particularly important. It is to us, I know, but when you're creating affordable housing in the downtown of Salt Lake, I think you want it to be a constructive asset, and this will be. I don't think it'll be discernible from other buildings that are being done there, but yet it'll provide something that is quality architecture that will be an asset to the street. There's two buildings there. You'll see that there's the building on the left. Whitney, is it 139?
75.
How many units are a building on the left?
117.
117, and the building on the right is 73. In trying to move this project forward quickly, we made application for tax credits for both buildings and have been successful in securing them. So a large portion of the project's financing is in place at this point. This is the view, I get my directions mixed up, but west from where the Paseo.
From the Kramer House to State
From the
Street.
Kramer House, right, yeah, it's, on the Paseo. And that will be where a lot of the activities will happen. We'll have concerts there, and we'll have other sorts of markets and activities that'll go on a programmed basis. And this is the view actually from the Arts Center, from the Film Center, whom we're talking to try to integrate their activity back into the Paseo so that we create more energy into that area. Like I mentioned, the affordable housing projects are predominantly financed with low-income housing tax credits. Those have been secured. They represent about 25% of the existing project. We'll use tax-exempt bond financing, finance some through HUD and some through Fannie Mae. That will, for each of the projects, that will be another 30% of the project. And part of the NOFA, part of the project was I think you'd already approved $2 million to the project, and we have secured several other sources of financing. We took a hard look at the public benefit. Obviously, this is an extraordinary project in a lot of ways, but in terms of public benefit, there'll be the Paseo, which will be basically a urban parkway. The Kramer House will be preserved. The idea at this point is to have a restaurant there. There'll also be an occupied unit on the upstairs floor. Commercial space, about 23,000 square feet of commercial space. Obviously, that will be generate economic activity. And then there'll be subterranean parking. I believe 1 story of subterranean parking at this point, which is about 100 units of parking. It represents just under $6 million of public benefit. Just so you know, we didn't just come up with these numbers. The RDA staff, I think, really is responsible for calculating it. I know developers somehow can manipulate the numbers a little, but we didn't do that in this case. This gives you an idea of the income, the targeted income by unit size and by household income. The most compelling, and you'll see it ranges from 20% area median all the way up to unrestricted. There's 38 unrestricted units, and then a whole grouping of targeted income levels. Our property manager's not going to be particularly happy with having to do this, but that's going to be their problem. We do have some larger units. There's 13 3-bedroom units, and there's 52 2-bedroom units, so this will have the opportunity to satisfy some need for families that want to live in the downtown. I thought it was really interesting, and Whitney got this information. If you see it where it says affordable resident examples of exactly who can live here. And we went and looked at who the cashier at Harmon's Grocer, making about $20,000 a year, could afford a 30% unit. A medical assistant at a healthcare center could afford a 50% unit, and then a couple making around $30,000 each could afford an 80% unit. Those are all now technically affordable housing units. So a large mix of folks can live in this development. The RDR participation, what we're in front of you is an ask of about $6 million of loan proceeds. $2 million additional have already been approved, and I think you purchased the land, and your expenses for tearing it down brought your total cost to about $5 million. So we tried to figure out, based on that ask, how to pay you back, which is always a good thing when you're making a public loan. And we're successful in doing that by structuring the cash flow distribution between the various parties that will have debt on the project. And I think we have come up with something that the staff has reviewed and is comfortable with that could pay back the loans within 30 years, which will be the term of the loan. And the loans themselves will carry an interest rate, and they'll be collateralized by the buildings, and we already went over the public benefits. Timing of the project, we have tax credits. Tax credits will be 2019 tax credits. The building has to be placed in service by December of 2021 under the law. Right now, it's a 20-month schedule to complete this building because it's a tight construction, and it'll be a difficult construction. So we're already a little bit behind schedule. We're starting the architects to move. And obviously, you'll have to approve the loan next month, but then we will get started in earnest even faster. But time's of the essence to make sure that we get this project done. Unfortunately, with tax credits, it's all or nothing. If you don't place it in service by in July, in December of 2021, we'll have some trouble.
Madam Chair, I'm going to interrupt you for just a moment. And when we go back to the 2 buildings,
sure.
Because the distribution or the breakout of the different housing, that one was really helpful. How does that play out among the 2 buildings?
It's not like the market rate are in one, and they're mixed throughout the buildings.
I guess I was wondering if, with your sensitive tax credit timeline, if it incentivized you to build one building faster than the other.
Smaller building is the one with the big timeline. So the building to the right,
Okay.
that has the 9% credits. So that has to be the one placed in service by December of 2021. The time frame to build that, I think, is 16 to 18 months. So we do have some latitude there. The bigger building will take 20 to 22 months to build. So, but that's the biggest issue, is the smaller building.
And remind me the height on the larger building? How many stories anyway?
13,
13
on the
stories.
high and 8 on the lower.
85
Okay.
feet or something. You remember how many feet?
Oh, it's well over 100 feet.
100 feet. Okay. But it's,
Thank you.
at this point, the architecture will take about 6 months. Permitting process, I'm told, takes 6 months. We'd like to hope that we can accelerate that a little bit, so any help that you can give would be appreciated. But so we're figuring that if we get, it'll be about a year from now to get started and in the ground and then completed by the end of 2021. I'm open for questions.
Does any board members have any questions? Yeah, go ahead, Erin.
Thank you. And I didn't see if it was clearly in there, but the land that we own, that we purchased, how does that, is it a write-down that you're looking for? Is the loan covering any of it? Are you buying it outright? How does
David,
the
maybe
land
will you go
play
back
into
to
it?
that slide that shows
Yeah,
that one?
ask.
So
Thank
this
you.
one right here, what we're asking for is 3 components of a loan. It'll be approximately $13 million of total loans from the RDA. There's 3 components. One is the land, which is the seller note. That land is at $5 million. I believe you paid $4 million for it, $4.1 million.
$1,025,000, yeah.
$4 million, and the cost to demolish wasn't quite $1 million, but with other holding costs and whatever, I think we've sort of agreed on a targeted number of $5 million. So that's your out-of-pocket costs.
Got it.
That'll be a loan against the project, and it'll be
Okay.
paid back over the 30 years. $2 million has been approved already. Same thing, it'll be a loan on the project, paid back out of cash flow over 30 years, and we're asking for additional funds that will also be a loan and lien against the property and paid out of cash flow.
Got it. Thank you.
You're welcome.
And so the board is aware this again, sort of going back to looking at how we do our processes, the reason they're here now is because next month they're going to come and make the official ask. But this is sort of a way to gauge where we're all at, and if anyone has some deep concerns that they can answer, that RDA can answer, or get those questions to, or those answers to any questions before they go out and do something. And right, so again, it's kind of that temperature gauge, which I really appreciate, because I know that you rescheduled some things, David, to be here today.
Worked out
so I really appreciate you being here for us to do this. When I first saw this project, we were talking about that's a big ask. $12 million seems like a pretty big ask. But the great thing is that you're paying it back. So I appreciate that a lot. And I think we have to keep that in mind, of that it does seem like a really big ask, but it's not often that we get big asks with somebody willing to come in and say, oh, and by the way, I'll give it back to you, and then some. So,
Well, yeah, I mean, we structured it so that we're in a partnership.
Yeah.
So, we're in it a long time. You'll be in it a long time, but you'll get the money back and be able to deploy it.
and I'm really excited about this project. I think there's always been some skepticism, or there seems to be skepticism about how truly affordable, deeply affordable, and market rate can live together in harmony. And I know that you and Brinshore have experience in this throughout the country, and I am excited that we're going to get some of that here and be an example here in Salt Lake City of how that can really work. And I love this project a lot, and I appreciate the creativity that you guys have brought to the project.
I
Anna?
have a question. I'm sorry if I'm a little sick today, so I'm sorry if I missed it. When we met, you were talking about that you were in talks with the Salt Lake Film Society and the theater there to potentially put an entrance in the back, so it would be a second entrance for them. Is that still happening? Are you guys still talking about it?
It is, and actually we have a meeting with them tomorrow and their architect. So the woman who runs the film center is actually talking to the building owner next door, who would have to be the one to actually make the change. But she's had some very positive feedback from them, and they are supporting her at this point, but they'd like to see a design and see what it would really take to make it happen.
So the idea would be their main entrance, I think this is what we're talking about right now, their main entrance would be up the alley from Floral, and then they could overflow into that space there so that they could have, outdoor space in the summertime, and people could, put heating lamps and whatnot in other times of the year so that it's more festive as they enter the movie theater. Yep.
Yeah. Thanks very much for the presentation. I'm very, very happy about the 3 and 4 bedroom units, which is rare to find and badly needed. Is that pretty common in your developments you've done? Is that in demand kind of nationwide? Give me a sense of that.
It depends, okay? It depends on the market and who you're targeting. We often have larger family units. For the first 20 years of our development, that's all that was asked for. 3 and 4 bedroom units everywhere. It's changing in large part in many parts of the country, that the mix for family units is closer to 2s than they are 3s and 4s. So we're sensitive to that in different markets. There's different issues when you have large units with a lot of kids. So you're usually sensitive to those sorts of things. Here there won't be a lot of kids. I mean, there's plenty of 2 bedrooms, and there'll be some 3s and 4s. So there's not that big an issue. But we've had success doing this in many different markets.
Okay.
But it does require attention.
Do you anticipate having kid-friendly amenities in this particular project, or relying on the area around it for that?
There will be community spaces in the project, so there will be some areas. We haven't finalized the fitness area, but since there'll be kids, we'll probably try to figure out some area for them to do something in there. There is a little outdoor space that we can program, and so there'll be a few things that we'll accomplish here. Otherwise, and then there'll be the music program that will be part of one of our commercial spaces, which is free to them.
I asked that in the context of a broader discussion in the city, where a lot of our development downtown is very much focused on singles, couples. It's not kid-friendly at all. I mean, it's not a bad thing. It's just we're not really enticing families to come back downtown, frankly, to live. So I'm impressed by that. A couple of specific design questions. The Paseo, is that covered on the first level or second level? It's open to the sky, right?
Open to the sky.
And there's an entrance to the south tower right from the Paseo, but not to the north tower. Is that accurate right now in your design thoughts?
From the Paseo, one of the things I neglected to point out, and I'll point it out to you here, is on the left.
Yep.
Part of the concept is and even though there's tables in front of there, the concept is we'll have 3 live workspaces for artists.
So on the first floor, artist lofts then?
Yeah.
Okay.
So that's another thing to activate the Paseo, so they can open up, they could potentially show their wares, and so that's part of the activation of the west-south building.
Okay.
Sorry, my directions are not great sometimes. And there is entrance to the larger building, but most of the main entrances to the building, there'll be ancillary entrances to the east, but they're most off of State Street. That's where the activity is.
My last question for the RDA staff is, in discussions on the perimeter of this development, especially to the east, Floral Street, around Kramer House, right now there's a lot of vacant parking area there. What are the discussions like for property owners in that vicinity? Because I'm looking at a dead end on Floral Street now, and a dead end in the alley, but how does the parking work at this point?
Are you referring to the parking that's just to the east of Copper Common?
Yeah, north of Kramer House, and the at-grade parking, not the parking garage, but the at-grade parking off of Floral there for the businesses.
Yeah, that's owned by that property owner to the north.
Yeah.
And Floral Street will connect through, and this plan will still connect through, but it connects through, I guess, technically into that parking lot.
Is it just pedestrian connect through though? Because it looks on here that it would dead end at the plaza. You couldn't connect through for automobiles. Is that accurate?
We're talking about having the automobiles come through the alley, and we may use some of that space that's green there as parking.
Okay.
We're trying to figure it out. Some of it all depends on what happens with the Film Society, whether we can use it temporarily, whether it's just service space, but we're unsure.
So my question is, going forward, as you get in your design more and more, adjacent property owners, particularly to the east there, how are they being integrated? What are their long-term plans? How's that going to fit together for this? It'll make a big difference on that east exit of that Paseo.
I will tell you, we've had conversations with the building owner who owns the parking structure next door, and so that's part of the discussion with the Film Society too. There is some overflow availability, but I think they're concerned about long-term, commitment to that parking.
I would add, I think there's a vehicular access and easement that runs north all the way to 2nd South. I can't speak to how that's formalized, if that's an official easement or if that's just a function of that parking lot. I haven't had any conversations with the property owner to the north. I think, to your point, that's probably something worth understanding if they have any future plans for that parking lot. I suspect they'd be the first to tell us that they're looking forward to us doing something with what has previously been fenced off and an eyesore. So, but I think, to your point, you raise a good question of it's probably worth reaching out to them and see if there's anything that maybe we can or should be looking at as part of this project that would incorporate with what they may want to do in the future. It's a good opportunity.
Thanks. On the tails of what Andrew was saying, on the one hand, I think this is awesomely situated with a mid-block crossing to the Gallivan Center for families to have basically park space right outside the front door. And on the other hand, I encourage you to, when we talk again about that amenity connection, those opportunities, whether they are parking or they're more programmed space or real, what's another word, more plaza-like space.
Spaces.
The green areas on the map there. That as a mother of 3, if there was a place where we could just come down the elevator and step out the door and there's a great place to hang out, it would be used like crazy, and that creates a really unique set of eyes on what could be otherwise occupied by less than favorable conditions.
So we'll take another look at that. That space out there is...
Parents will fill your spaces.
Yeah, I mean, that space out there is public space, and it's designed to be used, for, gatherings, but we'll take a more detailed look at it to make it a little more kid-friendly. I'm not sure that that's totally kid-friendly.
I think you guys are the experts on this type of development, and from the conferences and the bit of exposure that we get as council members, there's so many creative multifamily installation pieces for kid friendliness that don't necessarily make it a playground, but they relate to the space.
They're climbable.
Yeah, they're architecturally,
Exactly.
we actually put one in Kansas City. It's pretty cool. So
I would encourage you to look at something like that, and I think it builds in activation in an area that you wouldn't get if it's just kind of open to everybody.
Okay.
My understanding is that kids like friendship swings, so just kidding. I couldn't resist. Did anyone know?
No, I do support Aaron, Councilmember Mendenhall, on this call. It's the biggest draw that we have right now in District 4, at least the ones that live very centrally, it's the library, but having this type of amenities would be very welcomed by a lot of families that are here, and they don't have that many options for their kids. Me having 3 stepchildren, when they come over, the library is where we hang out. But that's only, or the Leonardo. So I would encourage you as well to consider something like that.
We'll try.
And one thing that's great as well about that walkway is it'll have a public easement, but be privately maintained. So as far as maintenance, it'll be maintained.
Oh, nice work, Corinne. Nice work.
Yeah, it was pretty cool the way they did that, huh?
Yeah. Good work. It's like you can read our minds, or we've just been saying it for the last year and a half at least, right? Did anyone else want to say anything? I just want to say also to Whitney, I really do appreciate the research that you did locally. That slide about the wages and who can live there brings that reality to it of like, that's what's affordable and that's what's not affordable. And I truly appreciate you taking the time to localize that for us and to help us understand what we're getting and how awesome it is that we're getting it. So thank you for that hard work. It really has been a pleasure. I'm looking forward to this project as well. So if there's nothing else, we will see you next month, I guess, huh? Yeah.
Do we,
So,
just a quick question, I guess. our intent would then be to get this to the Finance Committee and then bring this formal request back to the board. So is there any heartburn with
Madam
the
Chair,
magnitude of the ask?
Can I offer a straw poll?
I would love a
of
straw poll.
Support for us to recommend this be brought to the advisory board and back to the board for consideration.
Okay. There's a straw poll on the table. Any discussion about it? Yes.
Yes, there's discussion.
Sorry, can I clarify? Court mentioned the Finance Committee.
Oh,
You
thank
said
you.
Advisory Committee, so I
meant
wanted
the
to just be,
Finance
okay,
Committee.
thank you.
Yes, discussion. The discussion I have is I'm excited about this project, which makes me even more excited for North Temple, that I would request that Bryn Shore come back and do the exact same thing for North Temple.
Absolutely.
Okay.
We got some interesting ideas.
Straw poll is on the table. All those in favor, thumbs up. Any opposed, thumbs down. All right. So we'll see you next month.
exciting.
Looking
Thanks,
forward
guys.
to that. Thank you. Our next agenda items, it's a little bit early, so I don't know if Jason is here. He's on his way. Okay, let's kind of skip the board appointment for right now and just see if there's anything from the executive director. Oh, Jason, hi, great, we won't skip you. So we're going to do a board appointment at this time, and thank you for joining us, Jason. If you would like to just briefly introduce yourself and tell us a little bit about why you're interested in RAC, the Redevelopment Advisory Committee.
Absolutely. First of all, thank you for having me. My name is Jason Head. I've lived in Salt Lake City for 3 years. I moved here from Chicago. I was born and raised in Chicago. I did spend a little bit of time in my early 20s in Arizona, but got the fever for the big city again and moved back. I left Chicago to come here to trade, big, tall buildings for big, tall mountains, and I don't regret it at all. I come from a background of everything having to do with design and construction and development. Studied architecture in undergrad. I was, in love with the idea of being an architect, but it turns out I'm not that great at it. So I've been involved in construction and real estate development ever since. Having come from Chicago, I love the urban environments. I love design. Chicago's, of course, world-renowned for its architecture and design. And now that I have deeply fallen in love with Salt Lake City, I want to play a part in whatever small way, and helping it grow into the future. I definitely have a lot of ideas of how Salt Lake City could grow and improve in terms of its urban environment, but that's why I'm here today. Yeah.
Great, thank you. Is there anybody, questions, comments?
I have a question.
Yes, sir.
It's important. It's a really important question. Are you ready for it?
Yeah.
You traded in tall buildings for mountains, right?
Yeah.
The other question is, we're in the final season. Did you trade in the Bulls for the Jazz?
I'm embarrassed to say that I really stopped watching basketball after the Bulls dynasty because nothing could ever live up to that again.
I might take that, but you've got to start watching Jazz games again. Welcome. Your expertise is well needed.
It is, and thank you, Jason, for being here. The advisory committee, as you see, we get really excited about cool projects, and it starts with those cool projects being vetted by awesome advisory committee that can weed out the not so cool projects and bring us the real cool shiny stuff, because that's what I like, right? And so it's important that your role is important, and we look forward to having you. So thank you for taking your time and energy to place it, volunteer here and do some important work for our city. The consent agenda is a little bit in 4 minutes, where I imagine you'll be approved. So welcome aboard.
Thank you.
Yeah, thank you. Report and announcement from the executive director. Anything from RDA staff? Anything from us? I wanted to say thank you to, like I said before, thank you to everyone who has worked with us through this budget and gotten us to through all of it and answered our questions and been able to really sit at the table and move forward. I fell in love with the RDA the moment that I became a council member, because I saw all the cool opportunities and work that was being done, and was just like, man, I want to be a part of that. And I thank all of you for letting me be a part of it in this way, and for kind of having this relationship where we can trust each other and work together, and even when we don't always agree, but can sit down and talk. And I just really appreciate that ability and collaborativeness that we have. And thanks to all of the RDA staff for putting up with me, because I know it's not easy. But I do want to say, whoever came up with today's agenda, man, putting those two feel-good projects at the end really worked for us, huh?
Madam Chair,
Yeah.
I just want to thank you as well for being so nimble and transparent through this whole budget process and through the budget amendment. It's been a lot of work, and I think everything for me has been clarified, making it a lot easier for us to see how clearly we need to move things forward and be transparent and nimble.
Thank you.
Thank you.
All right, with that, we have the written briefing, which was the annual report of RDA-owned property. I imagine everybody has looked over that. If there's any questions, if not, we'll move forward to the consent agenda. I'm looking for a motion.
So moved.
Second.
We have a motion by Board Member Luke and a second by Board Member Wharton. All those in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? That passes. Mr. Jason Head is now on the rec. And I don't think we have a closed session, so we're adjourned. And Mr. Chair?
Let's meet at 3:30.
Perfect. Thank you.